A guy I know just turned 44. Good job, nice house, 2 kids in school. He checked his 401k last month for the first time in 3 years, and the number made him put his phone down and just sit there for a minute. If that sounds familiar, this video is for you, because there's still time to fix it. My name is EcoSticker, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, the hidden psychological traps of wealth building, and why so many smart, hard-working people wake up in their 40s or 50s realizing they've been playing the financial game entirely in reverse. If you want to understand where you truly stand on the path to financial freedom and get a concrete mathematical strategy to correct course without living on rice and desperation, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up saving your future self a massive amount of stress. Here's a reality check the mainstream financial media loves to gloss over. They throw out terrifying, arbitrary numbers, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, without ever explaining the underlying mechanics of how they got there or taking your actual lifestyle into account. What happens as a result? People get overwhelmed, hit a kind of cognitive paralysis, and just stop looking at their accounts altogether. It's the financial equivalent of hearing a knocking sound in your engine and turning up the radio so you don't have to listen to it. But turning up the music doesn't fix the transmission, and ignoring your retirement balance won't stop the clock. Today, we're stripping away the vague guru talk and looking at 7 definitive signs you're running behind on retirement, then mapping out the exact sequence to close the gap and take back control of your timeline. Sign 1. The income to net worth illusion. If you're a high earner, $100,000, $150,000 or more, but your total liquid net worth is less than 1 year's salary, you're squarely running behind. It drives me crazy when people equate a high salary with actual wealth. Income is just the fuel. Net worth is the engine you build with it. What usually happens is a classic case of lifestyle creep. The nicer SUV, the pricier neighborhood, the upscale vacations, the elite travel sports leagues for the kids. Suddenly you're cash flow rich but asset poor, entirely dependent on next month's paycheck to maintain an illusion of wealth to impress people you don't even like. If your income stopped tomorrow, the whole house of cards collapses within 90 days. Sign 2. Blind target syndrome. If I walked up and asked exactly how much your portfolio needs to hold to support your lifestyle indefinitely, and your answer is a vague shrug or $1 million, you're running behind. Wealth building without a specific target is just aimless wandering. You can't optimize a machine if you don't know what it's supposed to produce. Your true number is a direct reflection of your annual expenses, multiplied by 25, based on the historical 4% safe withdrawal rule. $80,000 in expenses means a $2 million target. $120,000 means $3 million. Without that baseline, you're navigating an ocean without a compass, hoping you magically land on the right continent. Sign 3. Banking on the Windfall Mirage. People in their late 30s and 40s who suddenly realize their accounts are dangerously low tell themselves comforting stories to stop the panic. An inheritance is coming, they'll downsize and live off the equity in 20 years. The business will eventually scale and sell for 7 figures. Relying on these assumptions is like crossing a canyon on a bridge made of fog. Inheritances get eaten alive by late-life healthcare costs and estate taxes. Housing markets shift, and downsizing yields far less liquid cash than people calculate once fees and moving costs are factored in. Businesses fail or prove impossible to sell without the founder at the helm. If your strategy requires a perfect sequence of external, uncontrolled events to break your way, you aren't planning. You're gambling. Sign 4. The 401k Termite Trap. You have money sitting in a workplace retirement account but no idea what it's actually invested in or what fees you're paying. You signed up for the default option during orientation a decade ago and haven't logged back in since. Corporate 401k plans are notorious for stuffing default portfolios into high-fee, actively managed mutual funds or conservative target date funds charging 1% or even 2% annually. That fee sounds small on a statement, but over a 30-year career, it can quietly eat 30 to 40% of your total potential nest egg. It's exactly like termites in a wooden house. You don't notice the damage day to day, but year after year, they're eating away the structural integrity of your future. Sign 5. Debt outpacing investment velocity. Compare your total consumer debt, BAMRs, excluding your mortgage, to your retirement portfolio. If your debt balance is larger or growing faster, you're in serious trouble. This includes car loans, credit cards, personal lines of credit, lingering student loans, $45,000 in auto loans at 7%, $15,000 in credit card debt at 22%, against a $35,000 retirement account earning a volatile 8 to 9%. The math is actively working against you. You're running a marathon uphill in a backpack full of rocks. You cannot outinvest a structural debt problem. Trying to is financial quicksand. Sign 6. Structural account sequencing mistakes. You're running behind if you're prioritizing standard taxable brokerage accounts or low-yield savings because they feel safe and accessible, while your IRA and HSA sit completely empty. Every dollar invested in a standard account before maximizing your tax-sheltered options gets hit by tax drag. Taxed on the way in, taxed on dividends every year, taxed on capital gains at sale. By failing to use the legal shelters the IRS gives you, you're voluntarily handing a massive chunk of your lifetime, compounding returns to the government. It's filling a bucket with water while drilling holes in the side of it. Sign 7. Financial avoidance syndrome. The final sign is purely psychological, and it's the most destructive of all. A spike of dread whenever a financial statement hits your inbox, avoiding conversations about long-term planning with your spouse because it feels too uncomfortable. That's financial avoidance. When a problem feels too big to solve, our default instinct is to bury our heads in the sand and pretend the danger doesn't exist. We tell ourselves we'll figure it out next year, or after the next raise. But the calendar doesn't care about your anxiety. Time is the one asset that's completely irreplaceable, and every month spent avoiding your numbers is a month the compounding engine sits turned off. The catch-up strategy, a phase-by-phase plan. If 3 or 4 of those just described your life, take a breath and stop beating yourself up. The past is a sunk cost. It doesn't matter if you messed up your 20s or spent the last 5 years making expensive mistakes. What matters is the math you execute starting today. Here's exactly how we fix this, phase by phase. Phase 1, the non-negotiable overhead slash. You can't cut your way to infinite wealth, but you need to create immediate raw oxygen in your monthly budget to feed the investment engine. Skip the cancel your coffee subscription advice. It's low leverage, yielding minimal results while causing maximum psychological fatigue. If you're behind, you don't need to save $15 a month. You need $1,000 to $2,000 a month in structural cash flow. Attack the big items, housing and transportation. A $700 monthly car payment plus insurance and gas is actively burning the capital that could save your retirement. Sell it. Buy something reliable and boring with cash or a minimal payment. If your house eats every cent of your income just to keep the lights on, have the hard conversation about downsizing or refinancing. Your goal is to artificially widen the gap between what you earn and what it costs to keep you alive. That gap is the only thing that funds your freedom. Phase 2. The tax optimization blitz. Once you've unlocked that cash flow, route it through the exact optimal sequence to minimize taxes and maximize compounding velocity. First, contribute exactly enough to your 401k to grab every cent of free matching money. An immediate, risk-free 100% return you cannot afford to leave on the table. Second, max out an IRA. If you're 50 or older, use the legal catch-up contributions, a turbocharger for your timeline. Choose traditional if you need an immediate deduction to drop your current bracket, or Roth if you want tax-free distributions down the road. Third, max an HSA if you have a high-deductible health plan. The ultimate shelter, tax-free going in, growing, and coming out for medical costs. Finally, if capital remains, circle back to your 401k and ramp contributions toward the maximum limit. Phase 3. The income acceleration engine. Here's a brutal truth most planners are too polite to say. If you're 45 with minimal savings, you cannot rely solely on cutting expenses. The math won't work fast enough with a compressed timeline. You have to play offense, not just defense. Your decades of professional experience are leverage younger workers simply don't have. Consult for competing firms on weekends. Offer executive coaching, corporate training, or freelance project management. Think about it in real numbers. An extra $2,500 a month invested consistently at an 8% average return adds roughly $180,000 to your portfolio over 10 years. Money that wouldn't exist if you'd stuck to a single paycheck and hoped for the best. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. You're not quitting your job to become an entrepreneur overnight. You're carving out 10 focused hours a week and pointing your existing skill set at a second revenue stream. The accountant becomes a part-time bookkeeper for 3 small businesses. The project manager takes on freelance consulting for a competitor's product launch. The key rule is non-negotiable. Every dollar from that second stream gets routed directly into your optimized investment sequence without letting your lifestyle expand by a single inch. That discipline is what compresses 20 years of traditional wealth building into a single decade. Phase 4. Eradicating conservative drag. When people realize they're behind, their instinct is to get conservative out of fear. parking catch-up capital in savings accounts, CDs, or ultra-conservative bonds because it feels safe. This is a catastrophic mistake. With a compressed timeline, your greatest enemy isn't volatility, it's inflationary erosion and opportunity cost. Bonds and savings accounts won't give you the mathematical velocity to close a multi-decade deficit. You need the aggressive long-term compounding growth that only comes from equities. Here's the math that should scare you straight. $50,000 sitting in a savings account earning 2% for 15 years grows to about $67,000. That same $50,000 in a diversified index fund averaging 8% over the same 15 years grows to roughly $158,000. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between catching up and staying behind, and it comes down to a single decision about where the money sits. Log in today, look at your asset allocation, and ruthlessly eliminate high-fee mutual funds. Move into diversified low-cost index funds or S&P 500 ETFs. Pay fees of a few basis points instead of feeding fund managers living large off your lack of attention, and let the broad market do the heavy lifting. Standing face-to-face with being behind on retirement is incredibly uncomfortable. It's easy to feel regret looking back at money wasted on flashy cars you don't even own anymore, or houses you didn't really need. But regret is a completely useless emotion that carries zero economic value. The market doesn't care about your past mistakes, and the compounding engine doesn't ask for excuses. It simply responds to execution. Picture two versions of the same person, both starting today at 44. One reads this list, feels the sting of recognition, and closes the tab. Nothing changes. 5 years pass exactly the way the last 5 did. The other person picks one sign, makes one change this week, and then does it again next month. Not perfectly, not without setbacks, but consistently. The gap between those two people at 60 isn't talent, luck, or income. It's the simple decision to start while it still felt uncomfortable instead of waiting for it to feel easy. The person who realizes they're behind at 44, slashes overhead, optimizes their tax strategy, builds an income acceleration engine, and consistently feeds the machine for 15 years arrives at 60 in a position of absolute strength, security, and freedom. The person who keeps practicing avoidance arrives at 60 with their head still buried in the sand, but with completely depleted options. The choice isn't up to the economy, your boss, or luck. It's entirely dependent on the decisions you make with the next dollar that flows through your hands. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Face the numbers, execute the sequence, and turn the machine back on today. Your future self is counting on it.